A real cultural gem in western New York is the Ganondagan State Historic Site, here very near Rochester. It's my pleasure today to have in the studio in the spotlight with us G. Peter Jemison. He is the site manager for the State Historic Site. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for coming in. It's great to have you with us here.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Yes.
You know, what strikes me whenever I visit the site is that even the artifacts that are meant for everyday use have a lot of personality to them and a lot of artistic quality. So it's really an artistic experience to visit the State Historic Site.
Yeah, and you know, we've called the new building the Seneca Art and Culture Center. And we want people to see art that was created in the 1700s, art that was created in the 1600s, and then, of course, bring it up to date with artists who are working today and show, you know, their work, their achievements, and show this real expanse of time. You know, a friend of mine has a piece on exhibit. I just saw it over the weekend, and she says something like, "Welcome to 40,000 years of American art." And she has this petroglyph drawing of a rabbit in her art. And, you know, it's kind of a point that I've been trying to make, is that art existed here. It wasn't Europeans bringing art here. There was art here, but it was an art that was incorporated into the everyday living items that you used and, you know, items that you personally wore and so forth. And it takes a while for people to kind of, you know, adjust to that way of thinking, that these pieces, for example, these combs that were made out of moose antler that people use to maintain their hair, you know, they relate to our clan system, but some of them relate to just the eyewitness. They saw a European on horseback, they saw the horse, and then they rendered a horse in these combs as those became a new element in their environment. And, you know, very, very unique pieces. I mean, they'll fit in the palm of your hand, but very carefully, you know, rendered, and you can visualize again what they were seeing at that time. So, so that, yes, all of those things are a part of the whole story that we want to tell.
And so much personality in all of them, you know,
yes.
Connected to the animal world in a way that we're not necessarily now.
Yeah. You know, and another one is, we've been showing these things that are called Tump Lines. A tump line was used to carry a burden basket on your back. And so it went across your forehead, it tied to the basket, and then your hands were free, and you were supporting the weight with your neck and your forehead. Well, there was a type of tump line that was made. Let's say a woman's brother was going to get married. When that brother was going to get married, she began weaving this tump line, which she would give as a gift to her sister-in-law, the woman that her brother was marrying. But the weaving of it is extraordinary. It's so tight and so beautifully done. And so first they're using the underbark of a basswood tree, for example, or they might be using dog bane to create fiber. First you got to produce the fiber and all that, all the processing. Then they were weaving into that dyed moose hair. So each individual piece of moose hair, one person likened it to working with dental floss. Okay, you're basically weaving dental floss, and yet it has strength and it has this design. I say to people, you know, they didn't have a piece of graph paper and they laid it out and then they began weaving it. This is coming straight out of her imagination, and she's weaving it directly, coloring, of course, the moose hair to create this pattern, and extraordinary pieces. You know, we've got a couple of really beautiful pieces from around the 1700s, 1720, 1750, in that time period. Just beautiful pieces.
And is it a museum setting? How do you view these?
Well, yeah, they're in our cases and they're in a museum setting. Our gallery, you know, is, we have some permanent exhibits, and then we have a changing exhibit space. And we're rotating exhibits in and out of there every 2 years. But in the permanent one, we get a loan of an object. For example, we have the Tump Lines now that came from the Smithsonian. So they might only be a year in terms of the loan. So then we have to line up others where we can find them of the same quality and of the same kind. And then they may come to us for a year's, display. Some of these, you know, you have to be very careful because they're light sensitive, and you're talking about something, you know, that's over 200 years old, and you want to preserve it. At the same time, you want people to appreciate it and see it. You know, all of those things go into consideration in terms of controlling the light, the heat, the humidity, and all the rest of it.
Now, that's a very modern building, as I recall.
Yeah, it is a very modern building. We only opened the building in October of 2015. And as we got the gallery going, we began to make the adjustments that it was clear we needed to make to cut down the light levels and to get the right, you know, temperature and humidity control and all of that. You know, when you borrow something from the Smithsonian, they're very particular about how their objects are kept and displayed. You know, you can imagine.
Now, tell me about the traveling exhibit or the temporary exhibits.
Yeah, okay. We started off with an exhibit on the Iroquois Nationals, our lacrosse team that represents the Iroquois nations, and that was up for 2 years. Kind of starting from the beginning of the formation of the team and some of the things that have occurred to them. For example, they couldn't go and play in England because, you know, the UK would not accept their passport, and we told that story. So that exhibit wrapped up in March, basically. Well, actually, February we wrapped it up, and it's now gone down to the Seneca Iroquois National Museum, which it's a new building that they're building at the Seneca Nation in Allegheny. And so it'll be a part of their new exhibit in August. So to replace that one, we have one called Haudenosaunee Women from the Time of Creation. And this is broken into 5 segments looking at the contributions of our Haudenosaunee women, starting from our creation story. And you know Brent Michael Davids, and we did a film on the creation story, Iroquois creation story. And you know, the role of Sky Woman and her daughter bringing forth twins into the world who go about making the earth the way you and I experience it. And then from there we jump to the story of the peacemaker who united our 5 nations into a confederacy that we refer to as Haudenosaunee, meaning our ancestors built an extended house. And it really refers to the Confederacy, not just the bark longhouse, which is longer than it is wide. And from that part where a woman was the first one to accept the message of peace that unified us, a woman named Jemison, we tell that story and, you know, in a brief form and with our artifacts and other things there to supplement the story. And then we jump ahead to the time period of Akinoa. We say this is our women, our mothers, who were very instrumental at Ganondagan when we lived there. They were the ones who were producing the food that we ate, the primary agriculturalists, and you know, everything belonged to the women. They had inherited these rights from the time period of the peacemaker, that we're a matrilineal society. We take our nation, our clan from our mother. And so now we tell that segment, so we're up to the 3rd. Then the 4th segment that we talk about in this temporary exhibit, we talk about the influence our women had on the suffragists. The suffragists, you know, met several of our women. They visited them in our communities, and they began to see that they actually had rights. You know, they had an equality with men, and that there were clan mothers who literally selected the leaders that we were going to put up, our chiefs, in other words, and that there were also, you know, this notion that the property really belonged to the women. The house belonged to the women. Everything within the clearing belonged to the women. And women, of course, they were their children. You know, they're the ones raising them. And when you contrast that with the kind of rights that women had in the 19th century, white women, when they got married, really gave up all of their rights to their husband.
Right.
You know, of course, they had no vote. They did not own property. They did not really own their children. They didn't even own the clothing on their back. And, you know, they didn't have a real say over the menu they were preparing, the food. Their life was quite a bit of drudgery. And so, you know, by contrast, when they saw these things, it had a profound influence on Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Matilda Jocelyn Gage, and even Susan B. Anthony came to know some of the women who, you know, were very influential. And so we want to tell that story. We went out as we were preparing the exhibit, and we went to the Susan B. Anthony House. We went to the park in Seneca Falls, women's rights,
Right.
and we realized that piece of the story was missing, in those different exhibits and different locations. And so we were the ones who have to tell that story and talk about that influence. We're fortunate that there is a writer named Sally Roche Wagner who wrote about it. And so we have that backing too, her research that she did. The last part of that exhibit that we're doing right now, and it will be around for a couple of years, we talk about our contemporary women and the lives of our contemporary women, what kind of contributions they're making in their communities. And we say they're walking in two worlds. They may be Tuscarora, they may be Seneca, they may be Onondaga, but they really function in the greater world, and they do whatever they think is necessary in our communities. One woman that just popped into my mind, her name is Angie Ferguson. She's been all about preserving corn seed and developing enough corn to really sustain her community. If an emergency arose and there was a shortness of food or an inability to get at food, they have taken care of themselves. They're able to actually feed themselves. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yes.
when you think about it. And at the same time, she was given these corn seed collections that were made by other people who were at an advanced age and looking for someone to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And the main thing she's trying to do is get them back, the seeds back into the hands of those communities that they came from originally, and keep them growing. And we got to keep them growing in order to have the seed viable. So put some back in the ground, raise some of it, eat some of it, and do whatever else. So she's just one, but there are others who, we picked 7 women, and we looked at what are they doing today in each of their communities, and how does that help our communities, and they're great representations of our women.
We'll find that book that you mentioned and put it on the Facebook page for in the spotlight, and make sure people can find that book.
Yeah, I think it would be great to do that. And like Sally is not as well known, she actually manages the Matilda Jocelyn Gage home.
I see.
Which is a historic site itself. But again, she's an author and frequently a guest for speaking engagements. And of course, at this particular time, with all this recognition for the 3-year anniversary, or the 3 years of this anniversary of women's rights.
Centennial of women's suffrage.
Exactly, right. Yeah, so she's in demand.
So tell us about that creation story now. There's a film that you mentioned.
Yeah, we, it's a very involved story, but it's a beautiful story. At the end of the 1800s, there was a man by the name of Chief John Arthur Gibson, who lived on the Six Nations Reserve in Canada. He was a real oral historian, you would say. And he had lost his sight, but he had an incredible knowledge of our oral traditions. And so he sat down with an anthropologist by the name of J.N.B. Hewitt, and he recited this Iroquois creation story. In fact, he did it a couple of times, sort of adding to the story in the second version. And it really traces, the time period from the arrival of human beings on the earth and the development of the earth and the changes that have taken place, and all of the elements of the earth. And so he tells this story. It was a very involved and a kind of a difficult story to penetrate, because when it was translated in a version of, our English language from the 1920s in sort of dense type of writing. Along came John Mohawk, who was himself Seneca and taught at the University of Buffalo, and he created kind of an annotation of that, a little shorter version in a book form, which he self-published. And same story, taking the highlights from this story and putting it into a book version. And I managed to get a hold of that book. He was actually a cousin of mine. He's now deceased. At any rate, so we took that as the basis for this story, the Iroquois creation story. We had, again, pick out salient points we wanted to tell. We couldn't tell the whole thing, but we could tell parts of it. So then we managed to work with the Rochester Institute of Technology and their animation department to create a film I worked with a filmmaker named Kat Ashworth, and we had access to the graduate students in animation. So this is an animated film and also a partly live action film. And to do something really different that we hadn't done previously, we worked with the Garth Fagan dancers of Rochester, and they do a portion of this creation story as well, and choreographed, particular steps for this part of the program, where the birds are catching and bringing our Sky Woman to the back of a turtle, and they beautiful piece of work they did. And then I went out and I got people from our community who are not really trained actors but have good voices and good presence and so forth, and I brought them in and we recorded them doing the speaking parts for the animation. We were really fortunate that we had some pretty good animators working at RIT that could create what they call a 3D rig, so that you've got a three-dimensional figure. It's not just a flat figure, but a three-dimensional figure. And some beautiful work was done there. We worked with Brent Michael Davids, who you know. He's our composer for the music that's in the film. And we also have, of course, our traditional music in the film. Then we went to Joanne Shenandoah as the narrator for the film, and Joanne did a beautiful job, an Oneida singer, great voice, great quality of her voice. And so, we got all these people into this mix and produced a 27-minute film on our Iroquois creation story. We use it in our orientation theater. People can see it whenever they come. And now this film ties into the exhibit. You can either see the exhibit first and then go and see the creation story film, or see that first and then start from there to progress through the exhibit. And the two will tie together beautifully. That's
a wonderful film. I've seen it a few times. It's very moving and surprisingly haunting and very beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it is. And we find that children today are very used to looking at a screen. That's just a fact of life, right? So when the fourth graders, who are a big part of our audience, come, they zero right in on that film. And my interpreters have told me that when they start talking with the children afterward, they can pull out details. I mean, they'll start talking about details of the film that we're giving them a tour and we're taking them to the Bark Longhouse or whatever else. They may not get all of that, but they got that creation story film. It hits them right where they are, I guess.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. So that's film, and there's music in that film. Is there dance and the music?
There's also dance, yeah. We started off with, as I said, the Garth Fagan dancers doing this dance where they were bringing in Sky Woman into the back of a turtle. Now we say that when Sky Woman touched down on the turtle, she did what we call the woman shuffle dance. And she took some tiny amount of earth and moved it around the back of the turtle until it expanded into North America, into Turtle Island. So we have the women's dance in there as a part of the film. And then there's this conflict that takes place between the two twins that are brought into this world by Sky Woman's daughter. And these two twins at one point are struggling for who's going to control the earth, the force for the negative or the force for the positive. And that struggle, of course, still goes on today. And so we use an old dance, which is called the Iroquois War Dance. We're not at war with anyone, but this war dance goes way back in time. And so these two brothers are dancing that and struggling with each other for, again, dominance of the earth. And so part of that is in live, dance, an image of live dancers, and then it switches to the struggle in animation, and these three-dimensional figures I mentioned are in that part of it. And it's just very effective, and it's a smooth transition and kind of gives you the action of both, and very good piece of work.
That's wonderful. Now, if someone from our area or out of our area or we're planning a visit to Ganondagan in the summer, say, what kind of activities might they find?
Yeah, okay, so we have every year we annually have a dance and music festival. And we're usually the fourth week in July that dance and music festival takes place. And, and really, people kind of build their vacations around that. It's a combination of we have traditional craftsmen set up. We have traditional dancers that are there. We try to bring in a group from someplace outside of the area. For example, we've had Zuni dancers there in the past. And then we may have a contemporary music group perform as well, so that we kind of cover, again, the range of things that are going on musically in our communities. And now one of the new things we started last year, on the night before the Dance and Music Festival, on the Friday night before it, we have a juried art show. The artists who are coming to the festival, we invite them to submit a piece, and we'll have a nice opening on Friday night. We'll invite the jury in the afternoon to jury and award prizes to these pieces. And then people have an opportunity, if they are interested, to purchase one of these, exceptional pieces. And the exhibit will be up all weekend during the festival. Of course, there are foods there, demonstrators, tours and walking tours, and then a visit, of course, to the Seneca Art and Culture Center as a part of your ticket when you come. And, I would say the best thing to do is Ganondagan.org to make sure of the date and the time that it starts and any information you need about tickets and prices and things like that. It's all available online now.
Now, is it a large site? For instance, can you take a walking tour and
Excuse me.
and a hike, for instance, or?
Yes, Ganondagan is 569 acres of land.
Goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot of land. And we really have 3 trails that are marked clearly with interpretive signage. And one of them is kind of a difficult hike. It's about a half a mile, well, about a quarter of a mile to the west from the main part of the site where the festival is. It's called Fort Hill, and it's an area where our people stored the corn after it was taken, and they had a palisaded wall there after it was picked, I should say, and being stored. And then we have another trail on the opposite side of the road. It's kind of bisected. The site is bisected by County Road 41 and School Street.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and on the opposite side of County Road 41 from, the Seneca Art and Culture Center and so forth, is another trail that goes along Great Brook, a beautiful walk. It takes you to the back of the apple farm. A lot of people come out to our area to go and pick apples, and this takes you right out to the back end of the apple farm, following the stream. And again, as I say, it's not a signed, part of the trail system, but it just has a really pretty walk along that brook. We are installing this spring new kiosks, which will have good maps on them and good information about the kinds of things that are out on this trail and information we want people to take away. We're now a bird sanctuary.
Oh.
We've been designated a bird sanctuary, so we have an area of the site that we are really, one in which we're turning it into a savanna, and another which was previously a hayfield, but we found that there was a species of bobolink that nests there, and so we want to preserve that for them so they can continue to do that. Yeah.
Now, if I'm not up to a hike and I just want to see some handcrafts, tell us about the Longhouse.
Yeah, we have a recreated Seneca bark longhouse. We based it on a longhouse that was excavated back in the 1960s by a man named Charles Hayes. After 300 years, you just have stains in the earth where the upright poles, once were, and when they rot away, they leave what's called a post mold. So he had mapped out these post molds. That gave us the dimensions of the house, the width and length of the house. It gave us the width of the doorways. It showed us where the fire pits were. And from there, we went up. Of course, we had to build the structure from that floor plan. And we turned to a group called Ancient Lifeways Institute, which had some experience with this. They worked with us and helped us to build this longhouse. We have a big project coming up. 20 years ago, we opened this bark longhouse, and our roof has weathered 20 years, and now it's time to replace it. So we're doing something called Raise the Roof, a campaign to raise the money to buy the materials to re-roof it, okay? And this is a big deal because we got to take off all the material we have on there, replace whatever roof joists we need to, the rafters of the building, and put on there a new bark that will be a little better quality than what we used the first time around, in the sense that it has the ability to more expand and contract. Polyurethane expands greatly in heat and shrinks in cold. And so you got to have a bark that can actually do that. And we've now got a quality of it that we can do that with. You know, when we first built that house, there were very few or no applications using this. You're casting from real elm bark a polyurethane bark.
Oh.
And there were lots of interior applications where, you know, museums had trees and so forth inside. But now we were doing something outside, and nobody knew how long this stuff was going to last in the heat and in the cold and so forth. And so we made it through 20 years, but now we really need to have roof replacement so we can protect all of those beautiful artifacts we have inside of the museum, inside of the Bark Longhouse.
Now, are volunteers welcome at Ganondagan?
Always.
Always.
The Friends of Ganondagan, they're the ones to come and see. The Friends of Ganondagan are always recruiting volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers, especially over the Dance and Music Festival. But we also have volunteers that work with our Iroquois white corn project.
Oh.
That's another project where we are producing 3 different products from our heirloom white corn.
White corn.
Yeah, a roasted white corn flour, a whole hulled corn, and then a white corn flour. And the whole hulled corn can be used in a soup, it could be used in a stew, it could be used in a salad. The roasted, you could put that on your fish. If you're going to fry some fish up, you could make beautiful cakes out of that, cornbread. And with our white corn flour, you can use that as part of cooking. Gluten-free.
Gluten-free.
Slow digested food. So it's a very good food. And it
Not
contains...
high glycemic, in other words.
Not high glycemic at all, no. And it contains, they say, the building blocks of cells. So beautiful food, amino acids.
And is that commercially available?
We're selling it in our gift shop. We sell it at Wegmans. We sell it at Lorry's. We sell it at the Green Star down in Ithaca. We have a number of commercial outlets, and you can order it through, either buy it in our gift shop or order it through the Iroquois White Corn Project.
And is that on your website as well?
It will be on our website as well.
So what is that site again, just in case?
Ganondagan.org.
Ganondagan.org.
Yes, and you'll find that information.
So this was a Seneca.
A 17th century Seneca town that was destroyed by a campaign of the French in 1687. We had occupied the site from about 1655 until 1687. We know the definite ending date, when a campaign led by a man known as the Marquis de Denonville descended upon us and destroyed 4 Seneca towns and all of the food that was there. And one of the reasons we brought white corn back was that they recorded, whether we accept the number or not, 1,200,000 bushels of corn.
Oh, that's astounding.
It's astounding, and just to think, no domestic animals, women doing the primary amount of work here, a combination of what was growing in the field and what was stored was all burned. And so it's right to bring back our corn and to make it available and to encourage our own people to eat it.
Well, that's exciting indeed, and a real cultural gem in Western New York in the Ganondagan Historic Site.
Yes.
Thank you so much for telling us about it today.
Eric, thank you for the invitation. I've enjoyed being able to talk about this.
My guest has been Peter Jemison. He is site manager for the Ganondagan National Historic Site here in Western New York. Thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome. You're welcome.